Eli Lilly's popular weight loss drug cuts type 2 diabetes risk by 94%. It's according to results coming from a study done by the company. For more, I'm going to bring in Jared Holz, healthcare equity strategist at Mizuho. So, Jared, let's just start on that headline. Patients taking Zepbound, Jared, 94% less likely to develop diabetes. I'm curious what you made of that headline. Investors were certainly excited. You saw the stock hits a record high at $967, Jared.
Yeah, it's incredible. Every time we seem to get a data set out of either Lilly or Novo with respect to their GLP-1s, it usually surprises to the upside, and that's what we saw this morning. I mean, a 94% decline in type 2 almost makes me feel like everyone should be on the drug, irrespective of whether they're obese or not. So I think this just continues to open up the market for other indications for the company.
Well, and Jared, to your point, they're testing it in psoriasis. They're testing it in IBS, so various immuno-related diseases. We've talked to folks who cover the industry before about this. It always makes you feel a little bit nervous when something seems like a panacea, right? Historically, within healthcare, have we ever had a drug that accomplishes that sort of scope of treatment?
I don't think anything even close, truthfully. I think some of the indications you mentioned, they're on the come, no doubt. And I think as we move forward here into 2025, I think every single analyst on the street is going to start to talk up / hype the opportunity in Alzheimer's disease as being another inflammatory indication that's clearly massive that these drugs could potentially work for. And I think we're going to have data. I think Novo is going to have their data on Alzheimer's disease in the second half of next year, so about a year from now. So I don't think we've ever seen anything like it. I agree. I think when we talk about markets like this in such a positive way, there's always something to be, concerned about down the road that we're not thinking about correctly. But I just don't know if we're actually going to see anything overly negative with this group, other than pricing and competition, which I think are relevant for pretty much anything out there in healthcare.
What do you think, Jared? I'm just curious. Insurers conclude, if anything, when they see results of studies like this?
Well, they should be concluding that more patients should be covered. No doubt about it. I mean, we always talk about preventative medicine and the fact that this industry in particular, most of the therapies on the market are for treatments after the fact. This is finally a medicine that seems to control, cure, whatever you want to call it, so many different underlying medical conditions. So I think if you're an insurance company, you probably say we should look at it. I think part of the problem is this: if you start covering a drug on a single plan today, you don't know where that patient is going to be 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, et cetera. And not knowing that means that your cost savings might be captured and may not be. So I think that's really the hesitance out of the insurance industry as far as covering or not covering the drugs. But when you look at what it might save down the road, they should definitely be covering this for heart disease, for stroke, now for prediabetes. It's a no-brainer. It's just that when do you actually capture the cost savings? It's too ambiguous right now.
Jared, thus far, when you look at how this has played out in the market, Novo and Lilly have been the big bets here. We've seen a lot of selling in sort of the diabetes related, whether it's devices or treatments related names. Do you think that is sort of how the trajectory of this continues? Or do you think we'll see a lot of other drug makers that will successfully get into this space and the diabetes related companies will adapt? I mean, what does the next 6 months to a year look like for this trade?
Yeah, that's one of the most relevant questions we get, honestly, is kind of like, how does the rest of the industry navigate around the success of the obesity drugs? I think when we look at medical devices as one area, I think it's just getting more difficult to own the stocks long term. I mean, it seems like there will be a market impact, a negative market impact in time. When are we going to see it in numbers? I think that's the main point of contention or debate. But I would think undoubtedly that at some point these diabetes device makers feel some impact. The sleep apnea companies feel some impact. Cardiovascular companies feel impact. The more and more patients that go on the drug, I think the worse it is for medical devices, but it's probably just too much of a longer term situation, to really play today. But yes, the volatility around these data sets in other areas of healthcare has been very pronounced.
Jared, when you're talking to clients and they ask you how big you think this market is going to be for these weight loss drugs, like the ones we're talking about, 5 years out, 10 years out, what do you tell them, Jared?
Well, I think the consensus is right around 100 billion. And when you look at the population of just the US and a third of the population by medical terms is obese, even if you were to assume prices get cut in half from here, and instead of 1,000 a month, it's 500 a month, you can still easily get to that $100 billion mark. That doesn't include Europe and does not include Asia or rest of world. So I think 100 billion is just the start. I think what's going to happen longer term is that once the market does accelerate into that sort of general vicinity, you are going to see price decreases. You are going to see more competition. So I think it will kind of self-correct in order to not get out of control. But the $100 billion numbers, when you look at the population of the US and you multiply it by anything north of 500, can easily get to 100 billion.
Big stuff. Jared Holz, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.